Hi, I'm here to talk about agroforestry and zero carbon Bristol. I'm just going to quickly sort of go about some of the principles behind agroforestry and some of the systemic thinking behind it as well. My first thought of the day is one of simplicity. When we're faced with a huge problem, we tend to overthink the solutions when the problems and the answers are really staring us in the face. And nature also tends to provide for common sense. In the 1960s, NASA employed much innovation, resources and expertise to develop an amazing pen that could write in space. The Russians just used a pencil. I'd like you to just sort of think of that through my talk. So when we're designing for carbon sequestration, there is already an amazing machine that has been invented, and it's called a tree. So what is agroforestry? It's land use that combines agriculture and forestry, and it provides for our needs very sustainably. There's three types: silver arable, which is your your tree lines and your crop alleys; silvopastoral, which is livestock in woods or woodland eggs; and forest farming, a whole ecosystem yielding many different products and resources. And there's much produce from agroforestry. It's not just timber, meat and crops. So I'd like to ask, what are our needs? Economic growth seems to cause so much unnecessary production and consumerism. So is a plastic toy soldier really necessary, or my tyres on my car designed to wear out very fast so I have to buy more, or even DIY tools that break after a couple of times of use? Economic growth, do we need it? No, we really do need to stop interest and commercial banks making profit on money creation, but that is another story. And also, why do we need to shelve so much social innovation just because it doesn't meet target bonuses or dividends for shareholders? We're missing out on a lot of solutions here. Food security, food waste in the retail infrastructure, farm to home, as we've heard about just before as well, has much to answer for. And forget straight bananas, they'll be growing food with barcodes on next. The UK food waste in 1 year amounts to half the import needs of Africa. So where do our resources come from? The lithosphere, the Earth's crust. And this is a real problem. We're consuming the lithosphere at an unsustainable rate. Things are running out and we're spewing it all over the place. And of course, it's our lithosphere consumption that is causing our concerns with climate change. We're sort of learning to do things efficiently now, but ironically efficient at producing what? We're sort of producing still quite a lot of rubbish, and we're happily consuming our way to oblivion. If we need to tap into the earth and the lithosphere, we need to be very sensible and conservative about what we use it for. We need to wisely get the most out of very little from the lithosphere. A systemic approach to problem solving stops the further sort of fixes having knock-on effects, and also it stops different solutions competing with each other. Systemic thinking increases efficiency. When applying it, solutions fall into place like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. In thinking of net zero carbon, we need to rethink what we're using our resources for and how we use them. We've already looked at the lithosphere as a source of resources, but there is a far more sustainable resource bank, and this is the biosphere. It's life on Earth. What's the current state of play with the biosphere and us? Well, the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment shows that we're severely globally degrading it by our land use practices. And to top this, we're using vast amounts of energy, water, manpower and resources to achieve this. And it doesn't matter how efficient we get at degrading the biosphere, we've got to stop really if we want to have a future on Earth. So essentially we're using the world's resources inefficiently to create deserts, not only sand but sheep, arable, pine, palm and most importantly concrete. The Natural History Museum understands that the threat to wildlife today is from deforestation, urbanisation and land use, predominantly intensive farming. We need biodiversity and natural forestry in order to survive. Imagine the end project report for when the human race becomes extinct. Professor Jared Diamond has already written this report based on past civilization demise, and his conclusions were deforestation and environmental destruction feature very heavily as causes. We need to take heed of that. So where's this going? We're consuming the lithosphere at an unsustainable rate. We're degrading the biosphere very inefficiently, and the Earth's systems are changing to more unfavourable conditions. GM and biotechnological solutions for land use only provide short-term fixes. They're very inefficient as they work against the natural state and will of the planet. Again, think of NASA and their pen. They're experiments on life that should really, do we want them on Earth or shall we have them in space? The multinationals can be quite good at painting profit, export targets, and commercial innovation with greenwash. Wakelands Farm, Professor Martin Wolf, a friend of ours, Dave and I went up to see him. This is his farm. It's an oasis. So agroforestry is an efficient systemic solution. Not only does it help mitigate climate change through carbon sequestration, think of the tree, but it also provides resilience against the impacts of climate change. So instead of the arable desert, we have this. Instead of the sheep desert, we have a more hospitable place for animals to live in. And instead of the concrete desert, we have integrated rural and urban communities. And guess what? Notice the amount of locked CO2 sitting on the land. And what do we do with this? We can turn it into engineered timber, build houses, bridges, we can make bioplastic out of it, or forget locking it, we can just use it as a fuel. Benefits of agroforestry are systemic and incorporate climate change needs as well as holistic sustainability needs. There are many benefits from agroforestry. It uses less water, energy, nutrients and agrochemicals by employing nature to do the work, and it's 1.3 times more productive than modern agriculture. So Martin told us. And some of the benefits, I'm just going to quickly run through them. Hydraulic and nutrient lift, so that's bringing up water and nutrients for the crops to use. Good against drought resilience and climate change. And as the tree decays, the roots and the leaves, this creates more soil. You can use nitrogen fixing trees as well, such as alder. The roots prevent soil erosion from wind and water. Again, leaf decay and root decay form soil, and nutrients and water leaching is arrested through the roots as well. It also filters water for riparian and buffer zones. They offer shelter for livestock, wind protection for crops, frost protection, we've already mentioned drought protection, all important for combating changes in the climate. Increased biodiversity, and that's pest and disease regulation as well, us included, less chemicals and energy. Biodiversity preserves the gene pool, resilience for it by crossbreeding with polyvarieties and wild varieties. Water regulation, flood events without carbon emissions. Agroforestry also provides for natural habitat, and bees love it. That's one solution for helping the bees. Multiple yields from one parcel of land, that's food and fuel from the same plot of land, no conflict. We've also got diversification of the farmer's income, not putting all eggs in one basket, and less dependency on multinationals, more control of their own economy. Most importantly, biosphere restoration, ecological restoration. So this is in conclusion. What has agroforestry got to do with zero carbon Bristol? As we're here today, the virtues of local food, and we already have. We also need to supply our local resources and commodities from the bioregion. Bristol needs to be put back in touch with its hinterland, hence the Royal Agricultural College. We need an efficient, sustainable land use which will empower the integrated rural and urban community. Agroforestry is the answer. Combine this with other agroecological practices, zero emission farming and renewable technologies, sustainable land use will be in our grasp. We have the ability for a happy future. Thanks for listening.